got to be a time. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming this evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Audit and Standards Committee. Do we have any apologies?
We have an apology from Councillor Burt Proctor and Councillor Graham Hutton as substitute, and an apology from Mr. Phil Butters.
Thank you. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Does anybody have a declaration of interest that they need to make? No? Okay, thank you. Item number 3 then, the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody have any issues in relation to the minutes of the previous meeting? No? Right, okay, we'll take those as a true record then. Thank you. Moving on, item number 4, the audited statement of accounts for the year 2020-2021. And Craig's going to quickly run through those for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The accounts and audit regulations required that for 2020-21, the accounts should be approved and published by the 30th of September if the audit had been concluded. A notice was placed on the Council's website on the 30th of September stating that the accounts couldn't be published on this date due to issues beyond both the Council and Grant Thornton's control. These issues related to delays in the completion of the audit of the Staffordshire Pension Fund by another audit firm. Since the last meeting of this committee, at which the draft accounts were reviewed, we've worked closely with the external auditors to complete the audit. Grant Thornton have issued their audit findings report that Paul Harvey will shortly present to the committee, and this can be seen at Appendix 2. The findings report contains one adjustment that has been made in the accounts that are presented at Appendix 1 and a single recommendation regarding the procedures that we follow in relation to related parties. The findings report is very positive, and I'm pleased to recommend that the committee receives and approves the statement of accounts for 2020-21, subject to the external auditor's final review, and that the committee delegates authority to the chair of the committee and the Section 151 officer to authorise the accounts for publication after this. I'll now pass you over to Paul, who's going to present the audit findings report. Thank you.
First up, I'd like to say Andrew Smith sends his apologies. He's the key audit partner for this audit. He had a clash with another audit committee, and he chose to go to the one where he has harder messages to deliver. And you should take it as a positive that he decided not to attend this meeting. I'll take the report as read, but I'll just go through some key points within it. If you go to page 104 of your pack, if we go to the headlines on page 102, 101 and 102, we are proposing to issue
We've got
different
more
pack.
than one type of report. We've got the statement of accounts and the audit findings report, but the audit finding report, the hard copy, is basically as it's been produced.
Okay,
so it's not. It doesn't have the pack numbers on it.
Okay, I'll use our page numbers then.
Okay.
So if you go to our page, page number 3, main headlines, we substantially completed our audit. There are a few audit queries that we just need to resolve before we can issue our opinion. At the current time, we're proposing to issue an unmodified, which is an unqualified opinion on the accounts. If you go on to page 3, as previous at the last audit committee, I think we presented a report. The VFM, we normally issue our VFM conclusion at the same time as the financial statements. During this year, there was a new regime that was implemented by the National Audit Office, which is a far more detailed process. And the National Audit Office have decided that actually for this year, they can be separated, and the VFM conclusion should be published within 3 months of us issuing our audit opinion. At the current time, we're proposing to undertake the work shortly and issue our opinion in January 2022. Staying on page 4, statutory duties, we haven't used any of our statutory duties. There's nothing that we want to report for those. So going through to the financial statements, page 6, as part of our audit, we identify materiality, a number of materiality figures where we identify adjustments for under these. These remained unchanged from the audit plan that we presented to the committee in April. Section 2 goes through our significant risks. The only one I want to bring your attention to is on our page 9, which is around the valuation of land and buildings. Our testing has identified a couple of errors on this, or issues on this error. One was around the misclassification of an investment property, which should have been classified as an asset held for sale. And as part of our testing, we also looked at the source data used by the valuer in arriving at their valuations. And we've noted a few discrepancies between the internal floor area used in the calculation and the actual measurements on the floor plans. For the investment property, the council officers have agreed to amend it, but for the internal floor areas, because it was a small figure, that is the unadjusted error that's in Appendix B. Going through the report, we go through our key judgments. We've got nothing within those two reports on page 12 and 13. And then the last bit I'd like to bring your attention to is Appendix A, which is our action plan. As Craig's already mentioned, as part of our testing, we've made one recommendation in relation to related party disclosures. That's on page 23. We've identified one issue in relation to related parties. We've made a recommendation that as part of the year-end processes, officers undertake a review of Companies House to identify undisclosed related parties in relation to senior officers and members. Appendix B, which is on page 24, is a follow-up of prior year recommendations. When we completed the 1920 audit, we made two recommendations, and both of these have been implemented during the year. And then Appendix C takes you through the adjustments. So at the top of page 25, the adjusted misstatement relates to the value of the investment property, which was misclassified and should have been shown as assets held for sale. And then below that, it's just an issue in relation to related parties. And then if you go on to page 26, the unadjusted errors, this is in relation to the floor area. In total, the value was 140,000, and that's not been adjusted for the reason given in that column, in the final column. And finally, I'd just like to take you through page 28, which is Appendix D, which is the fees. We are currently proposing, when we presented the audit plan, we changed the audit fee from the scale fee to represent a number of issues that have risen during the year and additional work that we have to undertake. And the proposed fee was 66,352. We're not proposing to amend that fee. And then Appendix C is the wording of our opinion. I don't propose you go through it in any great detail. It just sets out that we're proposing a modified opinion, and it will be delaying issuing our certificate due to our work on the VFM still being outstanding and the work on whole of government accounts. And I'm happy to take any questions on the audit findings report.
Thank you, Paul. You said that you expect to sign off the audit in January. Is there any likelihood it might be before that?
So there's two aspects to it. So the audit opinion we're proposing will be issuing within the next couple of weeks on the financial statements. We've just got a couple of things to tidy up on that, and then that's finished. And then the VFM conclusion will be issuing our what's called an annual auditor's report, which contains our narrative on the VFM. We'll be issuing that in January once we've completed that work. So they're kind of two separate things. Normally they would come side by side.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Do we have any questions? No. No. Okay. Thank you.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
It's not a question, but I'd like to thank the staff involved for this, because I think this is an excellent set of accounts, and the fact that nobody's got any questions tends to back that up. And I'd like to thank Sarah and the team and Craig and all the rest of them for doing an excellent piece of work here. Thank you.
I'd like to reiterate that obviously it's a mammoth task And I think the team's done very well to get everything done. Thank you. Okay, moving on then. Item number 5. First of all, is the committee happy to delegate the authority to Sarah and myself to sign the audit report and the accounts? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Item number 5 then, the Treasury Management half-yearly report, and Craig's going to go through that for us as well, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The SIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management recommends that members should be informed about Treasury Management activity at least twice per year. It was agreed that this committee would monitor and oversee the delivery of the Treasury Management strategy through the receipt of this report and a year-end Treasury Management report. The half-yearly report is attached as Appendix 1, which I think is page 143 in your packs, hopefully. The economic commentary included in the report has been provided by the Council's Treasury Management Advisors, Arlene Close. It should be noted that the Council's priority in its Treasury Management activity is to ensure the security of its capital and to maintain liquidity as far as we can. As I'm sure you're all aware, the investment market is particularly low at the moment in terms of returns, and it's forecast to remain this way in the short term. The Bank of England base rate is currently 0.1%. At the 30th of September, the Council held funds of £15.5 million. £12.5 million was held in the Government's Debt Management Office accounts. £2 million was held in a public sector money market deposit fund, and £1 million was held in the Council's current account for liquidity. During the first 6 months of the year, we've undertaken no borrowing at all. So, in summary, Treasury Management activity has been undertaken in compliance with the Treasury Management strategy and the prudential indicators that are shown in section 9 of the half-yearly report, which is on page 150. And I'm happy to take any questions that any of you may have.
Thank you, Craig. Do we have any questions? No? Thank you. Okay, if we could just note that that's been received by the committee then. Item number 6 then, the internal audit update for Q2, and Claire's going to give us a run through on that. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the internal audit update report for Q2. So it covers the work of the team from July to the end of September. The internal audit plan that was agreed by the committee in March allowed for 301 days of internal audit work. So during Q2, work continued to be undertaken both on audits from the previous financial year and items that were on the plan for 21-22. The team, I think, now is at the stage where working remotely is sort of the new way of working for the team, and I think they've adapted well to that. And that is sort of the way we will continue to conduct our audits. As it says there in the report as well, what we're also trying to do is make sure we're visible, particularly at Newcastle. Obviously, it's still fairly new with COVID happening. The team hasn't had a chance to come out and meet people. So that's something we certainly want to try and do over the next few quarters as the restrictions sort of ease, and make sure we're more visible, as I said, to make sure that we get our audits completed. Just another update for the committee as well. We've actually got 2 new members of staff in the team now, recent appointments, so that will hopefully be helpful as well in terms of making sure that we can progress audit work. At table 1, top of page 28 on my report, that's probably not the page on yours, sorry, I've only printed my bit of the pack off, but the planned audits in progress at the end of September are included there. And a number of these audits have actually now been completed. So when we come to the Q3 position, you'll have a number of audits that have now been completed to review. As it says in paragraph 2.2, we've actually also completed an IT audit needs assessment during the quarter. So that was a review just to make sure, with the changing risk environment around IT, particularly with COVID, to make sure that we are targeting the right areas in terms of our audit work. So that looks like it's going to look across a 3-year period. So the reviews that we were recommending be undertaken in 21-22 are included in that paragraph. So cybersecurity, personal devices and home working, Civica financials, because we've not looked at that system for a number of years, and HR systems as well. So that's just to ensure that, I think we said in the plan originally that we do a number of IT audits, so that's just to specify what we're doing based on that risk assessment. In terms of recommendations implemented, that's another key area for us to make sure that not only are we conducting reviews and making recommendations, but those recommendations are actually being implemented. That's where we add value as a service. So paragraph 2.5 there, you can see actually it's a positive news story there. So of the 262 recommendations that made, 248 of those have been implemented. So that's 95%. And we have a target of 96 by the end of the financial year. So that's a really positive position. Within Appendix A, we've got details there of the recommendations that are overdue for implementation. And there's 13 in total. One of those being a high, which relates to the GDPR review. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Claire, can you just give us more information on this? Why the GDPR review is the one that's the sticking point? Why is that one that's taking a little bit longer?
The recommendation, the high-level recommendation related to the role of the Chief Information Officer, and what the recommendation said was that we needed to make sure that was in JD of whichever officer was going to be responsible for that. So that's all I know. Sorry, I know what the recommendation is. I don't know whether anybody else has got an update in terms of when that recommendation is likely to be implemented.
I think Dan, the head of legal's got some information.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wonder whether it's opportune to go to Councillor Hutton first then.
And you've got a number of recommendations overdue for implementation. Can you explain the difference? Because they're one different.
Sorry, are you asking me to explain, the difference between the 14 and the 13? Is that your question? Sorry.
Yeah, but really the titles.
Okay.
So, it doesn't matter if it's $1 million and $1 million and one. What matters is number of recommendations not completed. What's the difference between that and something that's overdue?
Okay. When we complete an audit and we give somebody a recommendation, there's a timescale attached to that recommendation. So we don't expect that everything can be done straight away. So it may take a month, 2 months, 3 months for a recommendation to be completed. So the 14 there are all the ones that have been issued that have not yet been completed. 13 of those are actually overdue. So what we're saying is one isn't due yet. So that they've still got time against the target that we've set them to take the action they need to take to implement that recommendation. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good.
And then the follow-up then is how important are the medium ones? If GDPRs are high issues, are there any important ones in the medium bracket?
Obviously, we would say that it's important that all recommendations are implemented. Obviously, we make a recommendation because we think an area needs to be improved. Clearly, everything that's high level, we're saying actually is a really important one to get implemented. Medium ones are of medium significance. So having those recommendations implemented will make an improvement. So yeah, we would say that all the recommendations should be implemented, and say we are working with services to make sure that those ones that are overdue are implemented.
I'll hand over to Dan there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, through you. In relation to the GDPR related recommendation, and that was assigning specific responsibility for a Chief Information Officer into a job description. That is going to happen. My understanding is that it's opportune to do that through part of the One Council review, where responsibilities will crystallise as different parts of service areas move around, but the officer has been identified, and that is going to happen. But I just wanted to give some assurance to the committee in the meantime that we do have in place, an excellent information governance officer who is also our data protection officer. And I have also taken on responsibility as the CSIRO, the Council Senior Information Risk Owner. So I'm reasonably content that we have those areas under control and appropriate safeguards are in place. But that final recommendation of formally assigning responsibility through a job description will be happening shortly.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
It created a new one, Chair. I absolutely take at face value what the officers said about that it's not going to slip between the net, so to speak, and I accept that. But how long are we expecting this review to take before that actually is going to take place? Because I know that we're saying that there's officers responsible, and I accept that, but the audit wouldn't have made a recommendation to change that way unless it was, and especially on a high level, unless it was very important that it did change.
Thanks, Mark. Just before you go on to that, Dan, are we saying that the job is currently being fulfilled by a number of people and it's simply a matter of waiting for a specific person to be nominated to the task? Thanks.
No, Chair, through you, and trying not to create more questions than I answer, Chair. My understanding is that role was done by our former head of ICT, and the intention is that the current head of ICT is formally assigned responsibility for that role. I just don't think that's been written up into an adopted job description yet, and I think that will come through part of the One Council programme, where a number of these issues are being formalised, not just in relation to GDPR, but in relation to responsibilities generally. It's not in my gift to give you a firm timescale for that, but I would be incredibly disappointed if that wasn't done by the next time this committee meets.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Do we have any other questions in relation to the internal audit update report? No? Okay, thank you, and thank you, Claire. Item number 7 then, the Q2 corporate risk management report, and Sarah's going to go through this for us. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Oh, it works now. The Q2 corporate risk management report, this actually covers the period the 1st of July to the 30th of September. The council reviews its high red risks at least monthly, with the medium amber risks being reviewed every quarter. As requested, officers have been asked to report on the overdue risks reviews that are 6 months out of date. At the time of running this report, there were 3 overdue risk reviews, 1 in asset services and 2 in community centres. Following the previous Audit and Science Committee, there was 1 risk level which actually increased during Q2. This risk was identified in the balances and contingents profile in respect of the council becoming liable to pay compensation or legal fees. This risk changed from a medium 6 to a high 9. There are 6 new risks identified for Q2, which are set out in paragraph 2.2.2. And then the Appendix A shows the corporate risks heat maps. Happy to take any questions at all on those. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have any questions on this report? No? Okay. Sorry, go on, Graham.
One quick comment. Given the fact that we've just come through the pandemic and that risks and risk assessment inevitably was heavily affected by that, I think this is quite good. So I would like to thank all the staff involved for the hard work in keeping us on the straight and narrow.
Thank you, Graham. So could we, in that case, note that we've been through all the recommendations as tabled in the report? I won't go through them all individually. Thank you. Item number 8, then, the Wally's Quarry risk profile. We do have a report, but then obviously we need to look at some items in a confidential session. So if Sarah would like to just give us the basic details on the Wally's Quarry report.
Thank you, Chair. This is following the last Audit and Standards Committee. There is a request by members to actually look into the Wally's Quarry risk profile. So this report is basically outlining the risks that we actually monitor on a monthly basis in respect of Wally's Quarry. The information requested and contained is in the confidential appendices. As obviously you'd be aware that the abatement notice has been issued and is currently being in progress at the moment. So the information held on the confidential appendices details those sort of risk areas that we are currently regularly monitoring. So we can review those under the confidential appendices in a moment. Thank you.
Do we have any questions on this report before we move on later to the confidential section? No? Okay, thank you. So if we could note that we've received this report and that we'll be reviewing the risk profile then in the confidential appendix. Thank you. Item number 9 then is the work plan. There is one item that we need to include in the meeting in February, which is the value for money part of the audit, just receiving that. Other than that, I'm not aware of any amendments, and I don't know whether anybody's got anything they would like to have added in. Michael.
Chair, it's not actually this, but there's no real place on the agenda to talk about this. The usage of the UN Sustainable Goals targets isn't an option. It was mandated by full council, and there's 3 reports tonight that don't have them on it, and they need to be on it. And in a week where we've got COP21 going on, we've suddenly forgot to look at our environmental bona fides. So can I ask through you, Chair, that officers are reminded that they should be part of their reports? Okay, thank you for that reminder. I'm sure it will be noted and included in the future reports. Right, if we don't have any further questions on that, then we'll go through the disclosure of exempt information. To resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following reports, as it is likely that there will be disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs contained within Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended of the Local Government Act 1972. Could we all resolve that? Yeah. Okay. Has the